Hello everyone, welcome to this video and welcome to this channel. My name is Courtney and I am an EPIK teacher in the Jeollabuk-do area, and today I'm going to be sharing 10 tips, 10 things I wish I knew before moving to South Korea. So I just want to preface this video with two different things. Number one, I am an American moving to South Korea. My experiences are purely my own. If you're moving from South Africa or the UK or somewhere else, there might be different culture shocks for you, and also just within the US. So this is just clearly my own personal experience. You might find things very, very different. These are still things that I wish I would have known and would tell other people. Second thing is that I am an EPIK teacher, meaning that I do teach English in South Korea to elementary schoolers. If you move to South Korea for something like marketing or in the entertainment industry, living in South Korea might look really different from you. I live in the Jeollabuk-do province, which is about a 3-hour bus ride from Seoul, quicker by train, but it's going to be different if you live in Seoul, or if you live in Busan, or if you live in Jeju Island. I mean, a lot of different places in Korea, so this is again just my personal experience. Number one, slippers. In Korea, they wear indoor shoes. This might be really common in your own household or wherever you're from, but this was not common for me. In my house growing up, we never had to take off our shoes. I never had indoor shoes, so this was very unique for me. But specifically, going into Korean houses, there's usually a little section meant for your shoes and your slippers to come off. This is particularly helpful to know if you are going to be working in a school system, because you will have to wear these slippers at work. So I have to bring these with me to my travel schools, and I also have a cubby at work. So for education, you do still put these on, but I will say if you're working in some kind of other business, then you might just wear your typical outdoor shoes. So this is so dependent on what your job is, but with education, we still put these on. A caveat to that is I do know teachers in Seoul who are still EPIK teachers who don't do this at their school. So I do think bringing your indoor shoes and your slippers is very, very common for schools. There are obviously places where that's not the case. Number two, this is specifically for all of my Americans out there. In South Korea, there are no taxes like we know it, and you do not tip in the service industry. What I mean by no taxes is that when you go to pay and something is 1,500 won, then that means you're paying 1,500 won. It's already incorporated into the price itself, so you don't have to add on that sales tax at the end usually. This is consistent throughout most European countries and a lot of different places, but there are no tips like we would usually do with the service industry in the States. So really, the menu on the price is the amount that you pay, which can be really nice. Number three, this is about food, but most things here in South Korea I have personally found are really sweet. You will be hard pressed to find something savory here, even down to the chips here. They're usually sweet. Fried chicken, you can have this cheesy, more sugary coating on the outside here. Pretty much everything you can imagine as savory, they make sweet in South Korea. Obviously, there are more traditional dishes. There are things like tteokbokki as well, and then also just the most basic kimchi and different sides and stuff like that are not going to be sweet. But if you are going to not be eating necessarily traditional Korean food and going to convenience stores or just going and eating out, a lot of what you buy, even down to bread, can be very, very sweet. They just seem to put sugar in a lot of different things that you wouldn't expect. Number four, this was really hard for me to learn, but people don't smile at you on the street. I think this is a very typical American thing that you walk around and you just smile at people. And I'm not talking about a creepy smile, you know, just like a subtle, I acknowledge you smile. And I noticed very, very quickly that people think it's very strange here if you're walking on the street and you just give them a smile. I've talked to my co-teachers about this here, and they said that basically it makes it look like you want something from them. So they're thinking to themselves, why are they smiling at me? What do they want from me? Are they trying to talk to me? Something along those lines. And I'm just trying to smile and think that I'm polite about it, but really it just makes people uncomfortable sometimes. I'm not saying that's for all people, but me walking around, I usually try and smile at a lot of people, and that's just not what they do here. So just be aware that when people don't smile back, they're not being rude, or it's not that they don't care, they're not polite. It's just simply not as much of a thing here as in other countries. So don't be offended by it. It's not that they don't like you, it's just a little bit odd. Number five, public transport. So if you are in buses more specifically, or the subway even, then you are supposed to stay quiet. So inner city buses, it doesn't really matter where you're at. Even if you do talk to someone, it has to be pretty low level, but I would say just the buses I take every single day to my different schools where I work, the unspoken rule is to be quiet. So don't get on and talk on the phone, especially if you're talking in English. It just can be really rude and disruptive. You can get a lot of stares and looks. It's basically expected to be a very quiet place, and you're supposed to respect that. If you don't know it, it's really difficult to obviously do that. But now that you do know it, just try and keep your voice down, and more than likely people are just going to be listening to music or something like that. So there's just not a lot of noise on the bus. Number 6, this is just something I noticed, pretty random, but a lot of people just wear white tennis shoes or white sneakers here. It could be someone wearing a dress, a really nice outfit, or something casual like a sweatshirt, but I've noticed here that they just wear a lot of sneakers with everything. So it just is more, not quite street fashion, a little bit street fashion, but even people that I work with, it doesn't matter how old you are, a lot of people just wear white sneakers. So if you're debating on what shoes to bring to South Korea, those are definitely at the top. I would recommend. It just seems like a universal thing here that people wear white sneakers and very black jackets, not a lot of super colorful pops in the street. You kind of want to blend in, more black, white, or gray, and coming along with that is just white shoes. Obviously, you don't have to do this. It's just something that I took note of as soon as I got here, that seemed to be a common trend as of right now. Number 7, cafe life is really big here. So if you are a coffee lover like me, you will be very, very happy moving to South Korea. But something to note is that cafes, for the most part, open really, really late. So in the States, you might be used to waking up and getting a coffee before work, just running through Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts and getting your coffee. Here, you will be very ill-pressed once again to find a coffee shop or a cafe that is open before you go to work. So my work starts at 8:30, which means that if I were to get a coffee, it would be around 8 a.m. and almost no coffee shops are open. There are certain exceptions like Paris Baguette. If you're a foreigner, you probably know about Paris Baguette because it is open really late and also really early. It's also just not the most authentic Korean coffee at all, but that's one of the only stores, at least near me. A lot of cafes here open at 11. They can be open later into the night. It's probably not going to be what you're used to if you're used to those 24-hour open cafes. Number 8, this was quite a culture shock for me, but there's a lot of kids walking on the streets. Clearly this is dependent where you live in Korea, but I just thought this was really interesting. I just see a lot of elementary school students, the ones that I teach, walking around on the streets by themselves. They'll walk themselves to school if they live in the area. They'll get on buses by themselves, different places. It's just crazy. I definitely don't come from a place that you walk on the street by yourself when you're young. We're talking about less than 10 years old, just walking, waiting at the crosswalk, waiting to pass. Like maybe if you grew up in a city, this was a big thing. I did not, but I just see elementary schoolers just strolling around by themselves here, and they just feel perfectly safe and content. So it's just really interesting to see, really cool. Go to their little kids cafes. So once again, I see my students doing that, and it's just really fun, but it was quite a culture shock for me. Number 9, I would suggest definitely taking out cash at an ATM when you come here. I've traveled to quite a few other countries outside of the US, and I found that especially in European countries, living on just a credit card is perfectly fine, or your debit card. You don't always need to transfer to local currency. I mean, it would be helpful, but you don't always need to. Even when I lived in Scotland for a year, I only exchanged my money one time. Other than that though, and that cash that I took out, I pretty much just used my card for everything. I will say in South Korea, it is a bit more difficult to get by with that. Again, if you live in a bigger city, this is probably very different, but everything down from just street food to even things like topping up your T-money card, you have to have actual cash for, so it's really helpful to have. And also splitting the bills with people here isn't very, very common, so you'll probably end up paying your friends back in cash. So unlike other countries, I would say that it's very, very helpful to take out cash here to exchange your USD or whatever your currency is for won. I do think that's really helpful and is necessary living here. Number 10, Kakao. So Kakao has 2 different facets that I'm going to be talking about. There's also a banking system that runs through Kakao, but I don't know too much about that. But if you're used to living abroad, then you might know about WhatsApp or a similar app that you can connect with people internationally, but you don't have to pay fees. Here in Korea, they use Kakao a lot. Essentially, it is like a WhatsApp or what would be a GroupMe or something similar to that, but it's really, really popular here, all the way down to the little characters, like a Ryan character that they use almost in place of emojis. It's just very big here. In addition to it being a messaging app that's important that you download once you get here. Everybody's going to ask for your Kakao. In addition to that, you can also call taxis using Kakao. So that's just kind of an added bonus inside this tip, is that a lot of people use taxis here, and there are regular taxis that you can take, but a lot of people will take Kakao taxis. They're pretty inexpensive to get places. I see people do it all the time at bus stops when their bus is running behind. They simply call a Kakao taxi, they hop in, they go to work. They're pretty inexpensive, and once again, you can use that app to call the taxis, and it's really helpful. So I highly recommend getting the app. I believe that you can get it with a US phone number and other phone numbers abroad, but you don't unlock a lot of the access to certain components of the app until you have a Korean phone number. So it is really essential living in Korea to go ahead and get your Korean phone number. Number 11, this is just a bonus tip, very random, but I thought it'd be helpful to know before coming. Here, they don't sell a lot of scented candles that are going to be warm fragrances. Like if you're very used to a pumpkin spice candle or a vanilla cupcake candle or like freshly baked bread or something like that, you're not going to really find that here. There are Yankee candle stores just like sporadically placed throughout South Korea. I'm sure there are other candle stores as well, but this was something that for some reason was very important to me. There's a lot of floral scents, a lot of cherry blossoms or just cherry, different fruits, and a lot of floral scents here, but they don't really sell like the warm sugary spice scents. I know that's very random, but if you're the type of person who lights the candle in the morning, then you're probably not going to find that here, at least easily. All right, those are the 10 plus 1 additional tips that I have for you guys, things that I wish I knew before coming to South Korea. Once again, this is just my own personal experience. I'm interested to see if you've moved to South Korea before as a foreigner, what your experience was like, but I hope that this was helpful if you are looking into a move or just interested in South Korean life, the culture a little bit, once again, just from a foreigner's perspective. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're interested more in life in South Korea, specifically what it's like to be a foreign English teacher or a EPIK teacher here, then go ahead and subscribe. I would love to see you, and I hope that you have the absolute best day of your life. Bye!